This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Tuesday, the 22nd day of August. Thanks so much for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. Coming up today, our chief economist, Steve Moore, will join us. The best-selling book now, it's official, Tucker. Chadwick Moore, the author of that book. There was some chicanery that happened with Amazon. They tried to make it look as though maybe Tucker's book wasn't going to be as successful as it ultimately ended up being. Chadwick is here to talk about it. And it's interesting, the funny business that they try any way they can to make it look like you, me, our voice is not as popular, or people who communicate at a high level like Tucker does, that he's not doing as well or doesn't have as robust an audience as he does. So Chadwick will get into that. Also, I got a note from a friend, a good friend, who has a concern specifically for you women. If you are a lady and you're listening to this podcast, I would love your correspondence. I may share this entire note, actually, on the Haram Society. I think I'm probably going to publish the whole note that I got in private. I'm going to talk more about it, the note that I got, what he said. And for you conservative women, this is a question that I have specifically for you. And I'd love your correspondence. You can send me a note. You can hit me up on social media. If you're a harumfer, maybe you'll leave me a comment on Wednesday when I post it there. But it's his belief that women are the key here as we go forward in the 2024 presidential election. And it doesn't matter, Trump, DeSantis, or otherwise. It's about women. And this male friend of mine believes it so, and I'll explain to you what he means. That's on the way. Steve Moore, our chief economist. How about the 4-day work week as opposed to 5? How about getting paid for 40 weeks or 40 hours, even though you only work like 32? Seriously on the table, a proposal in Pennsylvania. So we'll get into that with Steve and some other news of the day. DeSantis is now being accused of his own basket of deplorables Hillary moment. I won't bury the lead. I don't agree with the way they're trying to frame Governor DeSantis and his answer there. Of course, we're coming up on the debate. Trump going to talk with Tucker, DeSantis and the others, 8 of them going to be on the Fox News debate stage. The camps are trying to make the case that each is unelectable, the other doesn't deserve your. So it's starting to get crazy and nasty out there, as it does in the primary. And you know my role here. I'm consistently being asked and goaded into these fights and debates with people about who should be the Republican nominee, and I'm resisting it, much to the chagrin of a number of people who reach out to me and say, you need to have so-and-so on, and you need to fight with so-and-so about this and that. I'm not going to fight about Trump and DeSantis. Not interesting. I will be honest and objective when I see back and forth that I think needs a ruling. And on this DeSantis calling Trump's voters names, I think it needs a ruling, so I'm going to weigh in today. First, I want to weigh in on a guy that wants to save you money on health insurance costs, and that's John Ruhlman, the guy that sponsors this show every day. It's usmedicalplan.com. That's the website, usmedicalplan.com. Saving money on health insurance premiums is a must. It's one of the most obvious, easy ways for you to put money back in your own pocket at the end of the month. Health insurance premiums are a fortune. It stuns me. I mean, I have a company plan, so my insurance comes out of my paycheck every couple of weeks. Those of you who buy it out of your own pocket, it's devastating how expensive it can be, particularly if you have kids that have special health concerns or family that has special health concerns. John works with over 80 different private health insurers out there. So he shops to find you the absolute best premium, and never you sacrifice coverage. Never, 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 never. I don't want you to think that like it's cut rate insurance to make it cheap. If you're a young person and you don't have insurance right now, it costs you nothing to get a really strong, robust plan. A plan that if you're, God forbid, in some kind of accident or taken out with illness, it actually cuts you a check so that you're effectively earning a living while you're hospitalized. Now, that's a great kind of insurance. And for you seniors who are on a fixed income and you have to buy a supplemental plan, let John shop for that. Save you a buck or two on your health insurance premiums. Private health insurance still exists. There's still some really great policies out there. And even if, worst case, none of it looks better, John can maybe usher you onto the government run plan. Whatever it means to save you money and keep you covered, That's what John Ruhlman and his team at usmedicalplan.com, usmedicalplan.com, or 877-410-4321. The Husk went to Hawaii, finally, and couldn't help but make it about himself again. Did you see this? He told the people in Maui he understands because he lived across the street from firefighters or something, and he had a house fire once or something. And by the way, did you hear that he had relatives that died too once?
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I
don't want to, but I'm going
what it's
to.
like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday, and lightning struck at home on a little lake. It's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond.
not a lake pond, really.
A wire and came up
That's a
underneath
puddle,
our
actually.
home, into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat. But all kidding aside,
His cat in his
I
car.
watched the firefighters,
These people lost their
the way they
lives.
responded. You know, there's an old expression. I grew up right across the street from a fire hall in Claymont, Delaware. And the expression is, God made man, then he made a few firefighters. You're all crazy, thank God. The only people who run into flames to help other people. And they ran into flames to save my wife and save my family. Not a joke. The smoke, and the firefighters here can tell you, sometimes smoke is so thick from the windows out, it was that thick inside the home. And we were insured. We did not have any problem. But being out of our home for a better part of a year was difficult. I can only imagine what it's like to lose your home.
This is extraordinary. I'm trying to picture my entire town burned to the ground. And sitting there listening to this old fossil, this shell of a human being, ramble on about, and by the way, it won't surprise you that according to the Associated Press, reports of this heroic fire that he barely escaped with his cat and his Corvette. Can you believe, who would go to a community that has been completely burned to the ground and talk about their Corvette? Sincerely, who would bring that up? I mean, I didn't lose it, thank God. But I mean, I could have. So you're sitting there, your entire life has been burned to the ground, and this guy telling this story. It was a small fire, according to the Associated Press report back in 2004. It was, quote, a small fire contained to the kitchen that was under control in 20 minutes. So, like every other story he tells, whether it's Corn Pop or whether it's a book he's written or whatever it is about this guy, every story he tells is some. The first time he saw men kissing and his dad, like none of that jives with reality, history, like geography. He makes it up. Or he tells these stories so much over the years. He's been in politics for 800 years, and he's been telling these stories at luncheons and private, get-togethers for so long that they just stick as anecdotes. Did you notice, interestingly, he slipped in there a little, some sort of old, I don't know where the phrase comes from, God made man and then he made firefighters. That's interesting. That must have been an old fable that he doesn't believe in anymore. I didn't know that he believed that God made anything. God made man. And then he made firefighters. Is he acknowledging a creator? Because he's regularly during State of the Union, he said live up to God's, what's it he said about people trying to change their gender? Live up to God's potential or God's desire. I forget exactly how he framed it. But it was somehow God honoring to butcher our children and give them chemical castration. That God somehow had something to do with that. So God made man, did he? Interesting little anecdote. Of course, he couldn't help but bring up the death of his own wife and daughter, which, look, he suffered. It's true. He lost a wife, he lost a daughter, he's lost a son. It's true. The man has grieved. He has lost loved ones. That is true. As for the people of Maui, a lot of them not impressed. This from MSNBC. A lot of Maui residents lining the streets with signs as he finally showed up. Listen.
Over to my right, there are a bunch of people out here. They've been here for hours. A bunch of them are protesting. They have their makeshift signs, cardboard signs, a lot of them saying, as we've been talking about, that he's too late. Some of them feel that he should have been here much earlier. Other signs that say actions speak louder than words. So hearing a lot from the people here, as well as Hawaiian flags.
Ooh. Holding signs. You're too late. Actions speak louder than words. Hawaii, a blue state, Obama's home state, lining the streets in the rubble and the soot and ashes of these fires. They're making signs, heckling the husk. What have we here? A little more on this. Maui unhappy generally with local, state, and federal response. Who's in charge, by the way? Who's in charge locally? Who's in charge of the state? Who's in charge of the federal response? That would be Democrats, wouldn't it?
But also expected to meet a little friction. Not only are people unhappy about the local and state and county response and about the speed of it, but also about sort of the perceived lack of communication from federal officials, including the president, who took a while to make a statement that was substantial. So there may be, as we may expect, a protest or two when the president arrives.
And as for Hawaii's native son, the governor, Josh, because when you think Hawaii, you think Josh. Here's what the governor... It's just, I don't know, you expect something like a Polynesian, kind of an authentic sort of heritage name to be your governor. Their senator is Mazie Hirono. Hirono sounds like a Hawaiian senator. That sounds like someone who would represent the native Polynesian people. Josh. Where did we establish Josh comes from, by the way? We know he went to Penn State, which is hilarious.
He's from New York, but yes, he was educated at Penn State and Swarthmore.
Why would you go from New York? How does the guy from New York become governor of Hawaii? Well, of course, Josh feels the people's cry like no other because he's from New York by way of Penn and Swarthmore. Huh?
So just to be clear, when you're talking about global warming, are you saying that climate change amplified the cost of human error?
Yes, it did. There's always going to be incredible things that people do to save lives, from the firefighters, from citizens, and there's always going to be decisions that are made that I'm sure aren't perfect in the moment. But when you have fire that moved more than a mile a minute, and what happened, I'm told by some of the survivors, they were at the initial fire. It was put out sometime late in the afternoon in Lahaina. And then the firefighters had to go to 3 other fires that had started because of the conditions. When they left, the fire stirred up again. And then when the storm winds from Dora, which were that strong, swept it out, it just destroyed everything. So there's no excuses to ever be made. But there are finite.
But I'm going to try.
There are finite resources sometimes in the moment.
Because heaven forbid. So all the residents whose homes, livelihoods, they've lost everything, they're all saying local, state, federal response sucked. They're telling the president, you're too late. We now have video. We now know what it was. We know the power company, Hawaiian Electric. We know the vegetation management problem. We know. Just like in California, we know a lack of vegetation management, deforestation. it's not done. It hasn't been implemented. So these fires, these winds, they happen. But, it's always easier. It's always easier ultimately, as our friend John Hayward said, to go global warming when you've seen a total and complete failure of leadership. Just as an aside, pivoting here for a minute, Jake Tapper. This surfaced from over the weekend. Jake Tapper actually said the words, folks, Trump was right. I hope you're seated, because I don't know that you'll ever hear this again in the history of broadcast. Jake Tapper, Trump was right. Listen.
And Kristen, Glenn Kessler from the Washington Post had a fact check about Joe Biden from earlier this month, noting that Hunter Biden admitted in court in July that he was in fact paid substantial sums from Chinese companies. Kessler wrote, Hunter Biden reported nearly $2.4 million in income in 2017 and $2.2 million in income in 2018, most of which came from Chinese or Ukrainian interests. But this directly goes against what Joe Biden said in the debate in 2020 with Donald Trump. Take a listen.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about what are you talking about? China.
Once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
So it's from two different debates, but I mean, Trump was right. I mean, he did make a fortune from China, and Joe Biden was wrong.
Yeah, you suppose? Trump was right, says Jake. Fat lot of good now. Trump was right. 51 intelligence officials formerly signed off on a letter saying that whole thing was made up. That entire exchange was a lie. And so when Biden barked and said, that's not true, well, we have the letter the 51 intelligence agencies say. And Jake and all of his colleagues parroted that. It wasn't true. And so, again, I just say that to suggest we shouldn't talk about 2020, you see, when you hear that, and then you'll hear people say now, let's talk about moving forward. Let's talk about the direction of the country going forward. That we should not remember that is how I hear that. When I hear people on our side say, let's not talk about 2020. Let's not relitigate 2020. Let's move forward. People say to me, Chris, you can't mean that. Do you really want Republicans? Do you want Trump and everybody else to start talking about the 2020 election? And no, that's not, I don't mean let's have an argument about whether Biden legitimately won or not. That isn't what I mean. But what I do mean is, are we really supposed to forget this? Jake Tapper saying Trump was right. That will be made into an ad, by the way. Donald Trump's people will make that an ad. I would suspect it soon, if they're not already in the process of making it. A clip of Jake Tapper saying Donald Trump was right. They lied. When millions of people in this country were told that something Donald Trump said on the debate stage was 100% true, Joe Biden barks, that's not true. And then the media comes back and says, we've looked at it, and 51 intelligence officials say it's also not true, so it's not true. And there were people with authority, because Jake Tapper and CNN and media said it, they went and they voted for Joe Biden comfortably because what Donald Trump rightly called him out on the debate stage over, being completely compromised by China and Russia and taking millions of dollars into the family accounts. That was all true. And millions of Americans were told it was not. In fact, not that it just wasn't true, but that it was Russian disinformation. Are we, seriously, I'm asking an honest question. Am I supposed to forget that? Fast Eddie, am I supposed to get over that? Am I not supposed to bring that up? Am I not supposed to point that out to voters as they consider who they're going to pick in 2024? I'm not supposed to say, remember 4 years ago when I said this and then they said that? And as it turned out, I was right when they called me a liar? And they've now admitted it? Like, is that not something to relitigate? Why do people want to move beyond that and say, let's not talk about the past? That was then. We need to have a forward-looking vision. I don't agree. I just don't. If you don't tell people what happened, then are we not bound to repeat it again? Shouldn't we teach the electorate to be more suspicious of what they're hearing in these debates? When Joe Biden says, that's not true, And I have a letter from 51 intelligence officials who say that's not true. None of that was true. Bothers me a lot. Let's unpack this listless vessels thing, shall we? Let's just tackle it now. What's the claim? I haven't actually listened to this, to be perfectly honest. I read it. For 2 days I've read it. That Ron DeSantis called Trump voters listless vessels. I've been reading this a lot. Trump people are convinced that this is DeSantis's basket of deplorables moment. All right, you've heard it, Fast Eddie. Was it as bad as basket of deplorables from Hillary Clinton?
Honestly, it was not.
It was not as bad.
Sorry.
All right.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, do we have it in its full context first?
Yes, you want to play? It's.
Is it
almost
long?
3 minutes.
Okay.
It is.
Well, then I think we should hear it in its full context.
Okay.
I think we should. Since DeSantis is being accused of calling Trump's supporters names, then let's hear it in full so that we aren't accused of taking anything out of context. Here we go.
Biggest thing that I see happening right now online when I'm going on Twitter and talking to people that I don't see a lot of other conservative personalities talking to you about is a lot of the arguments that many of the MAGA people will say that you are controlled by the Bushes and the Cheneys, that you are a rhino, that this is the real reason why you're running. I'd like to kind of put those things to rest once and for all. What is your response to that?
Well, it's just totally fabricated. I mean, I have the boldest record of any elected Republican in the country. I mean, how many establishment Republicans would send troops to the southern border? How many establishment Republicans would ban transgender surgeries for minors? How many establishment Republicans would eliminate critical race theory from our K through 12 schools? How many establishment Republicans would have been willing to fund transportation for illegal aliens to go to Martha's Vineyard? How many establishment Republicans would have done the constitutional carry for Second Amendment or the heartbeat bill? So it just flies in the face of everything that we've ever done for our record. And oh, by the way, I mean, I've been fighting the Republican establishment my whole career, including as a founding member of the Freedom Caucus. We showed how it's done in Florida. We came in. We drained this swamp here in Florida, and the state's never done better as a result. And we won a victory that no Republican governor candidate has ever achieved in the history of the state of Florida.
So to the people who make those claims, they make it so much. Why do you think that they say these things? Is there a reasoning behind it, or do they really think that?
I don't think they think it. I think that we have a strand in our party that views supporting Trump as whether you are a rhino or not. And so you could be the most conservative person since sliced bread. Unless you're kissing his rear end, they will somehow call you a rhino. So it's been totally detached from principle and what you actually believe and results. And it's more about, just what faction you happen to do. So there'll be people who are huge Trump supporters, like in Congress, who have like incredibly liberal left-wing records that's really just atrocious, and yet they're viewed as by some of these folks as like really, really good. Then you have other people, like a Congressman Chip Roy, who's endorsed me, Congressman Thomas Massey. These guys have records of principle fighting the swamp that are second to none, and yet they will be attacked by some of these people and called rhinos. So it's just been totally detached from any type of substance. And ultimately, a movement can't be about the personality of one individual. The movement has got to be about what are you trying to achieve on behalf of the American people. And that's got to be based in principle. Because if you're not rooted in principle, if all we are is listless vessels that's just supposed to follow, whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning, that's not going to be a durable movement.
Okay, we have a strand in our party that views supporting Trump as whether you're a rhino or not. Unless you're kissing his rear end, they will somehow call you a rhino. So he said there's a strand in the Republican Party. He didn't say all Trump voters, did he? He did not, I don't think. He said, so it's been totally detached from principle. This strand is the way I interpreted it. Meaning it's all about kissing Trump's butt. No matter how left-wing you are, as long as you're kissing Trump's butt, I'm with you, he says this strand is. Then he says, if you're not rooted in principle, if all we are is listless vessels, They're just supposed to, follow whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning. That's not a durable movement. Okay. Now, this has been called Ron DeSantis' basket of deplorables moment. And I'm seeing a lot of Trump supporters saying that he has just insulted the Trump voter. You don't take it that way, Fast Eddie.
I didn't, no.
I don't either. And he's right. By the way, not only do I not think he's insulting Trump voters, I think he's right. I think there is a strand, but I also think it's a problem for him. I do think that there are people who are Trump supporters who will not vote for anybody but him, and if he's not the nominee, they will not vote. I don't know how many there are, but I think it's real. I've said this before. The problem for every other Republican is there are a lot of people that support Donald Trump that don't trust the Republican Party. And if it's not Donald Trump as the Republican, they're not going to vote because they don't think there's a dime's worth of difference between Democrats and Republicans. And I am hard-pressed to convince them out of that position. Very hard for me to do. Very hard for me to look a guy or woman in the face who's hard and fast for Trump, and they say, there's not a dime's worth of difference between Republicans and Democrats, Stigall. Hard for me to debate them on that right now. Isn't it for you?
Very much so.
Yeah, so sure. This is something the Republicans are also going to have to deal with. If it's not going to be Trump, I think you're naive to pretend that every Trump voter is going to fall in line. I think we know that. He's right. There's a strand that views supporting Trump as it. That's the litmus test. You're not a conservative unless you vote for him and stand with him. I disagree with that, and I agree with his assessment, and I disagree with that position. If we are listless vessels, you're just supposed to follow and, whatever happens comes down the pike. So this came up on CNN. They're trying now to make this a real fight. Ken Cuccinelli is a DeSantis supporter and surrogate, and CNN tried to float this by him.
But there was a pretty interesting moment in a recent interview where Governor DeSantis talked about Trump supporters. He used the words listless vessels.
But he wasn't talking about Trump supporters.
Hold on. I'm going to play it for everybody, and then you can go ahead. Let's listen.
A movement can't be about the personality of one individual. If all we are is listless vessels that's just supposed to follow, whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning, that's not going to be a durable movement.
Everybody just saw there that there was a cut. You cut from the beginning of that quote to the listless vessels. Right. You just did what the problem is. So everybody who just watched that, understand, go read the transcript.
Okay, fine. So you summarize for us what was it that he was trying to say?
Well, first of all, his first point is an excellent point. This should be about America, not about individuals.
Okay.
And
how do we get from there to listless vessels?
Yes, well, the rest of an entire paragraph, by the way. I mean, there's a pretty big gap in your cut. So he's talking about some of the folks in D.C. who've endorsed Trump. He's talking about the more general environment and referring to all of us collectively. We can't just sit back and take all of this, be listless vessels. We have to move ahead with a different vision. That was not Trump assigned. And so folks, go read the transcript. You don't have to listen to me. You can go read it yourself.
Yeah. He's right. They did. They did cut that up. I played the whole thing for you because I wanted you to hear what they do and how dishonest it is. Ron DeSantis did not dismiss everybody who votes for Donald Trump. He most certainly didn't. And in fact, let me go back and read the I don't think they think it. When asked specifically, why is it Trump supporters say you're a rhino? Is there a reasoning behind it, or do they really think it? He said, I don't think they really think it. He actually said of most Trump voters, I don't think they actually think I'm a rhino. And I don't think most Trump voters do either. I listen, again, full transparency, I've explained to you why I have a hard time seeing my way past Trump in the primary. I am supportive of Donald Trump in this primary because I am, as a person. That's not me telling you what to think. That's me telling you how I feel. All right? That's what I'm thinking right now. Could I be convinced to change my mind? I suppose so. I'm listening. I'm watching. And if Ron DeSantis is victorious, I'm an enthusiastic backer of his. I've told you so. We spent how many months, years celebrating Ron DeSantis? I mean, you can go back and listen to old shows. I've done whole shows about what a kick-ass governor he is. I don't think he's a rhino. Of course we don't think he's a rhino. Ron DeSantis' name became mud with a lot of Republican voters who support Trump when he decided to challenge Trump. That's all. This isn't hard to understand. Ron DeSantis is not a rhino, for heaven's sakes. So, yeah, pretty dishonest. Now, I do think he misunderstands. I still think he misunderstands the passion there. He's frustrated by it. Ron DeSantis is very frustrated, as you can imagine. Wouldn't you be? You've been told how great. You've been kicking butt. You won by this historic margin in Florida. You've been doing it. You've been celebrated by conservatives. You've been told, run. You run. And then this. Wouldn't you be pissed off too? I'd be frustrated as hell. It makes all the sense in the world that he should be the Republican nominee to him. And it's not happening right now. It's frustrating. And all he hears all the time is, Trump people don't trust you. Trump people don't like you. And he's like, that can't be true. I know plenty of people that voted for Trump. Stigall was up there singing my praises. And I know he voted for Trump. He's right. Millions of us did. So he's frustrated. And he said, I'm getting a little tired of this thing being, if you don't support Trump, if you don't vote Trump, then you're somehow not a faithful Republican. I think that sucks. That's not fair. That's not true. And I think he's right. But I do think he misunderstands why people feel so passionately for Trump. I know it seems almost impossible to believe that there are people that still don't internalize this, but every now and again I have to stop people and say, why don't you understand that I have a friend in Western Pennsylvania who's never voted in his adult life except for one man? Why don't you understand that? Listen to me. Understand the importance of that. That I have a 50-plus-year-old male friend who has never voted in his adult life except for the presidency of Donald Trump. Nothing moves or motivates him except what that guy says on a campaign trail. And you can call him stupid. You can call him names. Go ahead. Insult him as the biggest moron you've ever heard of. As the most unprincipled, unserious American ever. Go ahead. Call him names. But the truth of the matter is, Donald Trump got him out of his house to vote for him. The others didn't. And the others won't. And there are millions more like that guy, and I would just keep saying respectfully to Governor DeSantis and those who are supportive of him, you're going to have to find out how to connect with that guy. You're going to have to figure it out. That guy's mood is not changing, and it's not about hating you or thinking you're a rhino, Governor DeSantis. That's not what it's about. He doesn't hate Ron DeSantis. He just believes that Donald Trump's the man for the job. That's all. There's a difference. Jason Perrette, he is the founder and financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning. He's a friend of mine, and he has a passion for getting you on proper financial footing. I don't know if you have a financial advisor. If you don't, I'd strongly urge you to make Jason yours. And you can be anywhere in the country. You don't have to be where Jason is. Jason can deal with you right over Zoom or right over the phone. He's fantastic because he focuses on producing consistent results for his clients based on their unique financial goals. His main objective is just to help you pursue your goal wherever you happen to be. Because he's a fiduciary, he's dedicated to providing clients with complete wealth management and investment services, and he constantly revisits the goals as well. He's not trying to upsell you. Jason can accomplish just about anything you need financially and keep you on track, whether you're a really advanced entrepreneur, whether you're a young person just starting out and you have no real plan at all and you need one, professionals, retirees. Maybe you're thinking about, now that I am retired, I want to make sure all my money's in proper order. Let Jason help you get it in order. Jason regularly revisits your goals, assesses your risk tolerance so that you really approach it as a team, and he helps keep you on track. That's a big part of having somebody as a partner like Jason at Eagle Wealth Planning. I hope you'll reach out. 816-394-8117. 816-394-8117. You can reach out to him through email as well, jason@eaglewealthplanning.com. His website is linked on mine at chrisstigall.com. Get together with Jason. Have a conversation with him. Tell him where you are. Maybe plan out a new path forward for your finances with Jason Perrette, a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning. We thank Jason for his sponsorship. Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer, and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. I got a note from a friend this weekend, and I should just read it to you in full. I really should. He's more fatalist in general. He's now moved on beyond Trump and DeSantis. He now believes the GOP can't win unless a woman's doing the talking. He's one of these that believes that in a post-Roe world, Republicans are doomed to never win another election again, unless it's a woman doing the talking. And I'm not really sure what to say about that. If that's what you believe, then I don't know what we're doing. He really genuinely believes at this point he doesn't think DeSantis, Trump. I mean, I've heard all the reasons people don't think Trump can win, and I've brought it up before. I have asked, how are we going to deal with abortion? I don't know that I accept necessarily that there is no chance in the world DeSantis and Trump can't win women. The Glenn Youngkin victory was a pre-Roe victory. That's true. Like in a post-Roe world, would Glenn Youngkin have won Virginia, for instance? That's a worthwhile conversation. I don't know. Fast Eddie, do you think in a post-Roe versus Wade world in which the states now have the decision on abortion, do you think that women are now going to be so motivated solely and only on that issue forever, Republicans may as well just pack it up and go home?
Not forever. No, of course not.
Do you think it takes a woman to win a Republican race for Republican? I should say, do you think it takes a woman to be a Republican nominee and candidate to win now in a post-Roe world because men can't do it?
I don't say men can't do it, but I think women do help. Yes.
So what would be the strategy here? If my friend is correct, he wants to see women taking the lead in the conversation for Republicans. He wants to see more Kim Reynolds of Iowa. He wants to see more Sarah Huckabee Sanders, for instance. How do we achieve that exactly? Because they're not running. There's only one woman running, and that's Nikki Haley. So these are the cards we've been dealt. If my friend is right, and I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying that's what it is. Here's another thing he's mad at. He thinks that the Barbie movie has been completely misrepresented. And I'm serious. He thinks that there is a cultural importance to it. I'm not making fun of him. He's sincere. He wrote me a very, very serious, long message about how he thinks Republicans are on the precipice of screwing things up for a generation with women. He said, I got to get something off my chest. This has been on my heart for a while now, and I'm just going to pound it out and let you know. And I'm oversimplifying this right now, but I'm driving home two critical points. He says he's getting just sick and tired of people coming on this show and people like me entertaining that Barbie was some sort of man-hating propaganda film. He says because you don't understand and you don't get the cultural significance, and then he went to see it. He got so damn mad, he decided he was going to go see it himself. And he came back to report that it was a culturally important movie that we idiots who just reduce it to man-hating don't understand. And that if we keep doing this, if we just keep pummeling and piling on this notion that women hate men, and in a post-Roe world, that we're missing the forest for the trees, and women are going to continue to galvanize and vote early and rally around the issue of abortion, and the Republican Party and conservatives generally are going to continually see more and more and more and more hostile to women and cultural things women cleave to. This is a sincere note from a friend that I trust. And I read it, and I sat and I wondered to myself, what am I supposed to do with this? There aren't women in the race but Nikki Haley, and Nikki Haley's not going to win the nomination. We all understand that. So short of Nikki Haley surging to number one and becoming the female nominee, should DeSantis and Trump just sit down and shut up and let women do the talking?
Absolutely not.
I'm not sure. I'm not saying he's wrong. I just don't know how to achieve what he's suggesting ought to be achieved. I don't disagree. We saw what happened in Ohio, and I posted on Twitter and social media. That should be a warning shot. I mean, they're mobilized early on All they were trying to do in Ohio was amend their constitution so it would take 60% threshold votes in Ohio going forward to amend the Constitution. Not a simple majority, but now it takes 60% to amend the Constitution. They were so mobilized, the left was, the pro-abortion movement was so mobile because they want to put on the ballot next year legalization of abortion in their Constitution. But what they couldn't afford was to go a 60-vote majority threshold to pass because they knew they probably couldn't achieve that. So they had to move heaven and earth to make sure the switch to amending the Constitution maintained at a simple majority. Does that make sense? And so they overwhelmingly organized on something that was completely benign and barely anybody was paying attention to in the middle of the summer. Literally no one's watching. And 500,000 people voted early to make sure it would only be a simple majority vote to amend the Ohio Constitution next year when they put it on the ballot that abortion should be legal. And next year in Ohio, when legalized abortion is written into the Constitution, and that's on the ballot in a presidential cycle, what does that mean? A swing state that's gone to Trump, that went to J.D. Vance. Well, I don't know, you do the math. So my friend isn't wrong here. I'm not picking on him. I just don't know the solution. He thinks now this is just completely missing it. This whole Hatfields, McCoys, Trump, DeSantis thing is, he thinks everybody's screwing it up and only women can save it. I don't have an answer for that. I just got a very long, thoughtful note, and I've been pondering it. I thought I'd volley it to the audience, volley it to you, and you tell me what you think of that.
So by his logic, whoever wins would have to pick Nikki Haley as vice president.
Well, or a woman. I don't know that it has to be Nikki Haley, but it's got to be a woman. And then I guess let her kind of take the messaging. Look, I don't know. Here's one thing I will say. Before Roe was an issue, women overwhelmingly drove the school choice movement. I mean, look, they're talking about bringing masks back now. Did you see this story yesterday? I put it up on Facebook and shared it with you. It's one random college in Georgia. Atlanta College reinstates COVID-19 mask mandates as students return. A week after classes began, Morris Brown College once again requiring students and employees to wear face masks on campus. It's a small private Atlanta college. Are you starting to see more people masking up around you? I am.
Yep.
Starting to see clerks at the store. Starting to see, and again, I'm not picking on you if that's your position. Folks, it seems as though we're headed back to a place where masking is being flirted with. Now let's walk this out. Let's walk this out to the rest of the summer, into the winter, and into next year. Could you see a place where we return to masking mandates, quarantining, closed schools? Could you see it? Just asking. Maybe not. And so, with that in mind, here's something I would offer up as a question to my friend who's of the belief that women are going to have to drive this discussion. What if we get back to the discussion of schools? Radicalizing and indoctrinating our kids in school, masking our kids in schools. What if we switch back to that conversation? Roe trumps that, I suppose, is what he would say. Maybe it does. I don't know. I just know that women drove the school choice movement. Women are who put Glenn Youngkin over the top. So can the Republican Party get back to discussing family issues and women's issues not related to abortion? Or is abortion the only thing? If abortion's the only thing, then it's the only thing. And then I don't know what else to say. I don't have anything clever to offer you. If that's singularly their focus, I don't know. It's going to come up. You can bet it's coming up during the debate, abortion. And they're all going to be asked, would you support a national ban on abortion? And they're all going to have to fumble and hem and haw around because, as we've discussed before, pro-life people want to hear them say, yes, I want to see a national ban on abortion. And what an untenable spot for these guys to be in, because they know, people like my friend say, you do that and you'll never sniff dog catcher, never mind president. You can't say that. So I don't know. I may read the note as it came to me, just to share with you, because this was he had thought this out for a while. He thinks you're a stone cold moron for knocking Barbie, by the way. You understand? The idea that you would make fun of Barbie and not understand why the Barbie movie's a big deal and why it's done like $1 gazillion at the box office and why all women and daughters are going to see this and why it resonates with women, and that the movie really isn't that bad. That, in fact, the movie is, he thinks, a celebration of autonomy, and that Barbie is not real life, the play, the model, the doll, that's a fiction, that it's actually a movie of strength, empowerment, autonomy, that the real world is messy and complicated. It is not a fiction and a toy. He thinks there's subtext in it that the conservatives just aren't getting. More the Tommy Lahren thing. Would you shut up and quit making a big deal out of the film? Which I don't think I personally ever made a big deal out of the film. He just thinks, he's telling me this is a culturally significant moment that conservatives are missing. Again, on top of the Roe thing. I've heard this from people. There are people in this audience who are extraordinarily fatalist about this abortion thing. They don't think it can be overcome now. In fact, they hate that Roe versus Wade was overturned and sent back to the states. If I could be completely honest with you, I've said this to you before, I think that this Roe versus Wade ruling and abortion being sent back to the states is something a good third, if not half, of Republican voters hated. And not because they're pro-abortion, they just never wanted this to be a national issue. Because now that it's a nationalized issue again, they think, and there's a healthy swath of the Republican Party that thinks Republicans cannot win again. So what do you say about that? Do you agree with that fatalist point of view?
I don't. I will tell you it's been very depressing in Pennsylvania for the past few election cycles. I can't deny that. I think that if you see Brian Fitzpatrick, he has a pretty aggressive opponent in I'm not talking Mark Houck in the primary. I can't remember the woman's name, but in the first district, if she goes all in on abortion and takes him out, I think that that's a strong sign that it's not going to go well for Pennsylvania again. So I'm upset about it, but
are women forever and always and only going to be moved on abortion? Do you think we're ever going to reach a time where women accept that it's a states' rights thing, and maybe your state doesn't deal with it the way they'd like, but you can move to a state where you can have all the abortions you want? Or are we just back in a place where we're not going to rest until somehow we figure out how to make abortion, codify abortion somehow through the Supreme Court? Is that where we are? Like, is this basically a tacit admission by people like my friend, the only way this is ever going to be solved is if we go ahead and lock it back into the Constitution through a demented interpretation of a ruling like Roe versus Wade? Effectively, for 50 years, people have been telling me, or however long it's been, well before I was born, I've had it explained to me by people smarter than me that Roe versus Wade was the most obscene reading of law ever, to make it a constitutional protected notion across the country that abortion was law of the land, that it was a perverse reading of law, that it should never have been interpreted that way. That's what I've been told for 50 years. It finally gets overturned, and now there's a swath of people that say, oh, God, oh, Lord, we'll never win an election again. So I'm not sure what we're doing. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? What am I supposed to do with that? What do I say? So we shouldn't have overturned Roe? It shouldn't have gone back to the states? Trump was a bonehead for appointing 3 Supreme Court justices who were committed to overturning it. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, if you believe women will never vote for Republicans again because Roe versus Wade was overturned, then I'm not sure what we're doing. And I don't think, by the way, I don't think women Republicans out there singing its praises or taking the lead is going to do anything. Just like I don't think black Republicans woo blacks. I don't think women Republicans woo women. I think that's just superficial. If you want my honest truth about it. I mean, I don't think women telling women it's okay to be a Republican works any more than black Republicans telling blacks it's okay to be a Republican. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not a fatalist, but how much do things have to suck? How bad does this country have to get? How unraveled must things come before people say, okay, maybe abortion is not going to be a front burner issue for me this time? Maybe the country still has it good enough. Maybe we're all still living large and fat and happy enough as a culture that we still have the luxury of talking about your niece or your daughter's potential future abortion options that aren't even real to most of us. Maybe that's, I mean, think about it, actually. That's what most of these people are voting on. They have the luxury because I guess their lives are that good. Groceries aren't that expensive. Gas isn't that expensive. Schools aren't that indoctrinated. The border isn't that wide open. Crime isn't that high. Prices aren't that high. I guess a lot of these suburban women have lives that are pretty fat and good enough. It's not gotten bad enough yet that abortion can still be their main driver. And so I guess my answer is the only way to overcome it is just let the country continue to degrade under Democrat rule to such a degree that we don't have the luxury of stroking our chins on the abortion issue. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell them about him, Bob.
Yeah, Chris, I can't begin to express how proud I am, obviously, of having my daughter there. Also, Dr. Geddes is just a wonderful addition to our practice. He is a classmate of my daughter Alexa's at Temple Dental School, and I have known Jared for about 7 years now. Getting to know Jared over the years, it was my wife Debbie and my daughter Emily who kept telling me, you have to hire Jared. You have to hire Jared. He's going to be a superstar. Jared went off to USC, did a 1-year residency after his year at Temple, and he came back and he worked for about a year in practice in New Jersey. And after, again, my wife and daughter beating my brains in, I got the message and I hired Jared, and he's been a great addition to Williamsburg Dental.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. Well, it's out now, and the book Tucker is doing as well as I suspected it would. I know Chadwick Moore, the author, was, back when we were first talking about it, before it even, it just had started going on pre-sale, you were a little worried about it, Chadwick. So now what? I mean, I saw the news stories that were calling into question how well it was doing, and it sounds like there was some fuzzy, funny, gimmicky math going on out there. I don't quite understand it. That's why you're back, because I wanted to talk about it. Good morning, and congratulations on the book.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, so, I mean, we had some really strange things happening. I guess it's maybe not strange when you consider the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But it's strange to sort of see it firsthand and kind of awful to realize that maybe these things go on. Yeah, we had, week one comes out, and the book sells out on Amazon the first day. And for a couple days after that, you couldn't buy the book. It was just out of stock, no option to do anything. They ordered more copies. It was put back up. And we had shipped about 8,000 books to Amazon that they had in their stock for day one. And that includes all months of pre-orders. So
may I ask you, could I just walk through this for a second? Because I think a lot of us don't know. I don't, and it's kind of an interesting process. You write this book that I assume people, I mean, if I'm a betting man and I'm in a decision-making place, I say, I think this book is going to do well. So I'm running Amazon, whoever pre-orders books to sell, pre-order. How do you determine how many to make, print, send to them? Is it just a guess?
So they tell you how many they want.
Okay.
And, we printed, I think, about 100,000 books. And, Amazon knows based on how many pre-orders are getting, how much attention the page is getting. They're pros. They know exactly how many to order.
Okay.
Apparently, they didn't order enough, and they sold out. I mean, which is weird. You'd think Amazon would have tons of books sitting around, but they didn't. And weirdly, Amazon's the world's largest book retailer. By far, 60 to 80% of books are sold through Amazon. then the sales numbers come out for week one, and the official numbers, and retailers are responsible for reporting their sales to the company that determines the bestseller lists. Tucker said only sold 3,000 copies. And we were doing our math, and we said, well, that would be if Amazon reported 0 sales. That would kind of be perfectly in line. And so what happened was the liberals got their headlines. Tucker book bombs, Tucker book flops. No one's interested in Tucker Carlson. He's nothing without Fox News. So that was some shenanigans. On top of that, for months of pre-order customers, Amazon was canceling orders without people knowing it. Amazon was telling people, hey, they ordered a book. Weeks later, they get a message, do you really want this book? If so, you need to log in on your desktop, not on your phone or the app, and actively confirm, yes, I still want this book, or we're going to cancel your order.
Wow.
Not only that, was Amazon was shipping books that people placed after it was released. So after August 1st, if you ordered a book, the website would tell you this book ships in 4 to 5 weeks. They would get it 2 days later. But people who pre-ordered the book back in May, June, July still hadn't gotten their books 10 days later, including my own mother. So I know this was happening if I didn't have hundreds of people sending me messages about this going on. So what that does is all the pre-order books, the reason why books have pre-order is all of those sales that you accumulate over months, although they count for day one. So they should have counted August 1st as a sale. And that counts for the bestseller list that week. And a book only counts as a sale once it ships. So that's why that's important. So, what it says to us is now week 2 book numbers came out, and we're number 3 on the bestseller list. So Amazon started reporting, but of course that doesn't include all what the other retailers did on the first week. And the bestseller list. So, this isn't like about vanity. It's not about me. Amazon doesn't care about me. It's not about my publisher, All Seasons Press. The reasons why the bestseller list counts is that's what people look at, what book buyers look at to say what books they should be ordering. So not only does it hurt sales, but then we had these negative headlines. So you're going to have people in bookstores, millions of people saw these headlines because I see on Twitter the book bombed, which is not true. And so it's hurting, my reputation, the reputation of the publisher, and also that of Tucker Carlson. Sure. The only thing I can come up with is that there is, and to state this, my publisher, All Seasons Press, we've got attorneys who are looking into this. They're investigating what happened. They're going to see what kind of shenanigans was happening, if any, at Amazon. If this was intentional, they do plan to submit their findings to the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. We've also reached out to members of Congress who are interested in this, who are on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And we just really want to know what happened, because now that Amazon's reporting sales numbers, the damage is done with the headlines. The only thing I can think of is that, again, it has nothing to do with me. Nobody cares about me. It's, maybe someone didn't want Tucker Carlson to look as influential as he still is.
Yeah, and as you and I talk, tens of millions of people have downloaded his latest interview and conversation with somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy, for instance. It's been up, just a few, really just, 48 hours or less, and it's tens of millions of views. So, I mean, you can see on Twitter, it's anecdotal. I know it doesn't translate necessarily to book sales, but the notion that his popularity is waning somehow, or there's lack of interest in him, is silly. It's demonstrable.
Yeah. And, it's still to this day, we're going on almost 4 months to the day that he was taken off the air. And he's, I think Americans are still really angry that he's not on TV anymore. And they still do watch. Anytime he posts on Twitter, they run immediately to watch it. And I think interest in this book, kind of shows that people are really curious about who this man is, not just who he is at work on television talking to people or on Twitter, but who he is behind the scenes, what kind of a person he is, what he really believes, where he came from. And that's what I think we really captured in the book.
What are you hearing about it now that it's been out and people have had it in their hands? I know you said he won't read it. He's already said he'll never read it himself.
That's his own policy against reading anything that's ever written about him. But his team has read it and they love it. They've contacted me. And they said they're going to try to get him to read it, but I know Tucker well now, so we'll see if he actually does. But that's nothing against me. He assured me. But everyone who's read the book, the last time I did speak to you, I did say I was nervous because it's a big responsibility to write about this man that is so beloved and hated by so many people. And when he Tucker really entrusted me to tell his story. He welcomed me into his life and his home, and never asked to read a word of it. And the response now has been, really overwhelmingly great. Everyone is really, really loving the book, and that's like such a wonderful feeling that these people, especially who really love Tucker Carlson or who are very interested in him, feel like they learned a lot about him from this, and that's a really wonderful feeling.
Well, it's as we talked before, Chadwick Moore. It's the thing about him. It's funny to me. I guess if you hate him, you hate his politics or whatever. But how you can hate a guy for being a sincere guy? I don't know him at all, but to me, what I see in him is just he exudes sincerity. Even if you don't agree with where he's coming from, I don't feel him ever insincere. And I know that's impossible to say about a stranger that I only watch on a television, but I think that's what makes him so damned effective is normally we watch people on TV and there's a veneer, and there doesn't seem to be one with him. And I would just add that when we have seen these sort of candid off-mic or off-camera moments, it's not as though he's dropping an on-camera, off-camera thing. Or there's no facade, but rather maybe there's like a coarse language that he can't use on air. But we look at that and go, oh, well, I would do that too. I mean, it's, we see ourselves in that, right?
Right. Well, I think you touched on something pretty profound, and I think his sincerity is probably the reason why he's so hated.
Yes.
Yes. He's and even back to when he was a young print journalist, he was known for calling out both sides, and he was known for not sort of, just repeating party lines. And he, to this day, that's probably the people he told me in the book, the people he hates the most are people who just repeat party lines. He says, if you have a sincerely held belief, even though I might totally disagree with you, I'll still respect you for having that belief. You could believe the earth is flat, and if you truly believe that, I won't hate you for it. In fact, I'll respect you for your sincerely held belief. I think that's probably why he's so dangerous and why so many people hate him.
Chadwick, I don't know how often you write books, how many you've written previous to Tucker, but is there someone else you have in mind for a future book? And is there someone that has this kind of cultural interest right now, other than people outside of politics? I've really been racking my brain since he left cable news, and it's just true. I think he may be the last national media figure in my personal life. Now, I'm a 46-year-old man. Maybe young people feel differently, or maybe older people feel differently. I just know me, and I can say that after Rush died, and now that Tucker's off television, I feel like I literally have no reason to ever turn on television again. Traditional television. Truly.
Oh, yeah. I feel the same way.
Like, is there another guy to write about out there other than Tucker? I guess is my question. I don't know.
I've been racking my brain. I can tell you, I'm really excited to get started on the next book, and I'm trying to figure out who that person should be. Hey, if your listeners have any suggestions, tell them to please reach out to me.
There are a lot of people that I like that I think are fine or talented or interesting, but not to the there's something about. I was explaining it to the audience this way last week, Chadwick. These guys, they were rallying. They were like I said they were like the pool on the Serengeti where all the animals gathered around and drank at the end of the day or in the middle of the day. You didn't necessarily have to agree with everything they said, but there was something about, particularly amongst we conservatives, we were interested in them, and they were sort of a nucleus, sort of a focal point. Maybe sort of a glue that bonded a lot of us together. And once Rush died, he's off TV. I'll just speak for myself. It feels like everybody's just kind of scattered like a herd of cats. And maybe we're better for that in the long run. Maybe we're not. I don't know. But that's my sense of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's I hadn't thought of that point, and that's a really great point and a really beautiful point, because I was sort of thinking that this presidential primary might prove to be the moment when, and Tucker Carlson is sort of the figurehead in the face of this, when independent media eclipses mainstream media, where independent media is getting the big stories and breaking the stories, and mainstream media is secondary, only reporting on what's happening in independent media.
Yes.
But what you lose with that is what you said, this sort of the nucleus that people can come together around and discuss, that one figure, that one person. Did you hear what this person said today? That something is definitely lost in that. And as much as I love independent media and want to celebrate it, there is certainly something lost. And I agree with you that I don't know if we will anytime soon have that again.
Yeah, and I don't know culturally if that's bad or good. I really don't, because I know the tendency of media people, and since I'm a media person of a long time, I know how it can sound like, oh, well, you like having the microphone and nobody else. That's not it. But I do lament, and Victor Davis Hanson and I were talking about this, I lament that we don't have, culturally, all of us, or certainly we conservatives, there's not a unifying factor. Particularly right now in the middle of this primary, you get the Trump people, the Ramaswamy people, the DeSantis people. There's not only intra-party infighting, there's not even a kind of a titular conservative media figurehead that we can all agree, I trust this person, or I'm listening to this person for counsel or guidance. I don't know that I've ever lived through that as I've followed politics and talked about news and politics as a conservative. So it's just a weird new time. I don't know that it's bad. It's just wildly different than I'm familiar with.
Yeah, well, I think maybe the deeper thing that we're getting at, without trying to sound too woo-wooey, is that it's a loss of it's a shared culture, a shared thing that people can have in common.
Yes.
When people gravitate around one singular person, it doesn't mean everyone listens like robots listen to one person. Right. But that's what we're missing is there's no I guess what you call a water cooler thing where you're standing around. Did you see what Tucker said last night? Did you see what Rush said? That's what we're kind of missing is that shared bond that goes beyond some figure being at the center of all media.
Yeah, like Victor said that, none of us watch the Oscars or the Emmys or any of that anymore because we all know that stuff that they put up an award now is not actually great. It's got some sort of message or it's got some sort of subtext that we're all supposed to just adopt rather than just enjoy it for the quality that it used to be. It used to be a thing we'd all watch the Oscars and we'd go, it was a great movie and we're glad it won. And now we just know it's garbage, so we don't watch it. There used to be events, I don't know, maybe the Super Bowl is one. It just seems like culturally there's very little of it anymore. I don't mean to belabor the point, but anyway, that's why I asked you and you're going to write another one. I don't know who, again, maybe I'm a small thinker in one lane and one silo, but I don't feel like there's anybody that interests me quite like Tucker or Rush did. Even politically now, I mean, how many books can you write about Trump and DeSantis, right?
yeah, for sure. But and I don't think the point's belabored at all. I think this is actually a really profound point. And with when you're speaking, the Super Bowl popped into my head before you mentioned it. But then I thought, well, I mean, okay, is this concerted? Because look at what has been happening to sports for the last few years.
Yeah.
They're trying to get people off sports by making it woke and bend the knee. And here's your pride jersey for hockey.
Yep.
It's like these things that everyone came together around, whether it was a sporting event, an award show, a movie, a media figure, commentator, or politician. We're having a really deep conversation here, and I'm really loving it.
Oh, I'm glad. I didn't mean to drag you into it, but it's. I think they're trying to make Ukraine a thing, like it's our 9/11 or something, and that's not working. Like we don't, we don't feel that for Ukraine, right?
That's what I think that they thought Ukraine was going to be, this national coming together.
Everybody wear the pin. Yeah,
and it didn't happen.
No,
for sure.
No, it didn't. I'm first of all, I'm very, very glad that your book is going as well as it is. What do you know now about the true numbers, the book Tucker?
So, week 2, Amazon started reporting, and we're number 3 on Publishers Weekly. We're number 4 on Wall Street Journal. The New York Times snubbed us, but we have all the sales numbers. We sold 150 fewer copies than the current number 1 book on the New York Times, and we sold 50% more than the number 2 book on the New York Times.
Wow.
So we should have been number 2 if they wanted to include us, but they didn't. Maybe they will this week, who knows? But that's how the book is doing.
I should mention, by the way, I don't mention enough that you continue to work at and write at The Spectator, right? Are you working on anything presently? Short form?
Yes. Oh, my God. Well, it's a silly one. They asked me to review I'm writing it today, actually. They asked me to review that Prime show, Red, White, and Royal Blue. Oh, my God. I had to watch it last night, and it was so... one of those movies that you watch, and the next day you wake up and you're still angry that you wasted time watching it?
Yes. What was the last good movie that Chadwick Moore saw? What was the last good movie?
Oh, that is a great question. Okay, you know what? I'll admit it. I'm a nerd, and I like Marvel movies. I don't care. And I finally watched Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I just really liked it because I like that franchise.
Was it well done?
That's not the intellectual answer. That's just I need something stupid to watch, and then I enjoyed the movie.
Listen, it's why I would be inclined to go see Indiana Jones, just because I'm desperate to like something where I would just kind of get lost in something kind of interesting and not political. But I hear it's not a good movie. I didn't see it, but
That's my whole goal with movies now. That's it. I spend all day long. We live in this mad world. I want to watch something that's just pure entertainment.
Chadwick, can I be honest with you? Do you know what I spend most of my nights watching at home now?
What?
Family Guy.
Good for you.
It's all I watch. I just back to back to back. Like TBS, there are two networks that will air those in succession all night long until like my bedtime. And most times, I just turn it on and watch Family Guy. It's ridiculous. But I have to be honest with you, I don't watch anything much but that anymore. And I'm kind of okay with it.
Can I tell you what I watch back to back at night?
Please.
My 600-pound life.
Fantastic. Chadwick, this is always fun. I'm so happy for your book success, as I knew you would have book success. And I hope you'll stay in touch. I always, maybe we'll just have you on from time to time to chat about garbage television, if nothing else.
Oh, please do, man. It's always great speaking with you.
MyPillow.com. Mike has invented yet another innovation in sleep satisfaction. I know because I'm sleeping on it every night. I sleep like a baby, and I'm not making it up. I don't really know how they achieved it, and I know it sounds almost phony or made up. In fact, I heard it, when they said, hey, we've made a new MyPillow, and it's cool now. It's the softest and smoothest and coolest pillow. I said, how? What do you mean? It's a fabric technology that regulates your body temperature. And I can tell you this because I'm a guy that kind of sleeps a little hot. And if I'm too covered up at night, I get hot. But I haven't felt hot. And I know this is going to sound strange, but you're going to have to just trust me and experience it for yourself. This new MyPillow 2.0 thing, they've designed a cool surface. It's engineered for comfort. It's a fiber. It's not a finish. It's a fiber. So the pillow is kind of smooth but finely textured, and it allows it to breathe in a way I've not experienced in a pillow before. Hard to explain without feeling it, but here's what they're going to do for you. If you use my name, Chris Podcast, if you go to Chris Podcast as your promo code, when you go to mypillow.com, you click on the radio listener square and type in Chris Podcast. That lets them know you listen to the show, but most importantly, it gets you half off. You buy one pillow, you get one for free. I guess that's better than half off. I'm not good at math. You get an entirely separate pillow for free. So one pillow you buy, you get one for half off. Got that? Got that. Now, on everything else at mypillow.com, save up to 66% if you use my name, Chris Podcast. Seriously. So that's the coffee, that's the robes, that's the slippers, that's the Giza Dream Sheets, that's the dog bed. Dean loves the MyPillow dog bed. He loves it. Sleeps on it every day since we got it. I love these sheets and these pillows. They are so comfortable. Christine loves her MyPillow slippers. There's I'm even sipping some My Coffee. Mike's got his own line of coffee now. It's all American made. You can feel great about who you're buying the products from, but also who makes them. Great customer service, too. If you call 800-932-5056, tell them Chris said hi, say Chris Podcast, you'll get that big deal, discount on all the stuff, and then the free MyPillow 2.0 with the purchase of one. A 10-year warranty, a 60-day money-back guarantee. Use Chris Podcast at MyPillow.com. So they are literally right now, as we speak, on Fox debating the 40-hour work week being scaled back for workers, moving to a 4-day work week but still being paid for 40. They're literally, I was going to bring this up with Steve, so let me jump in live for a second, and then I want to ask Steve about it.
Actually, so have some people work Monday through Thursday and some Tuesday through Friday. But it's been absolutely fabulous for us.
Well, and one of the things the Pennsylvania lawmaker was suggesting was you would get paid for 40 hours, even though you have to only work 32 hours. Jeff, you say you got to have people for 40 hours, otherwise it just ain't going to work.
That's right. It is not going to work. And one of the greatest benefits is when you look at it, our employees get 52 days a year off extra, which is great life balance work,
All right. Buddy, I know you've got a restaurant group. You're based down in Sarasota. Explain why, well, obviously, your restaurant's open every day of the week. Explain why this simply is not practical for the restaurant business.
Well, I don't think it's practical for any industry because we have to look at our capitalist system as a community.
And what's not good for the least common denominator of us isn't good for our country. The bottom line is the economics is going to pass on to the customer. We have to open 7 days a week, and that needs another tier of management if we're going to have a 4-day work week. It's pushing us into a socialized system once again, and it hurts the consumer. It hurts the middle class because we will have to increase prices in order to staff that extra day. Our managers work a 5-day work week. Sometimes we have to work 6. You know, at the end of the day, we're a capitalist system, and if it works for Jeff, that's great. That creates a competitive advantage for him. Let the free market dictate these type of strategies or benefits to the consumer. When it comes to consumer-facing businesses, the reality is it's going to hurt the customer, which ultimately will hurt Jeff.
Wow. So there's a restaurateur who sounds smarter than most politicians. He's talking about, the reason I jumped in with this is because I wanted to ask Steve Moore, our chief economist, senior economic contributor at FreedomWorks. Don't miss the daily hotline. Steve-O, this is being floated around in the legislature in Harrisburg. Democrat lawmaker plans to move forward with 4-day workweek legislation, more time to rest, and says furthermore, you can still pay them as though they're working 40 hours, even though giving them the day off. So Fox News has a couple of business owners debating. One guy runs a plastics factory. The other guy's a restaurateur. Obviously, two entirely different business models, Steve-O. But what of that? What if that became the law of any state? Pay you for 40, only have to work 4 hours a week. Or 4 days a week, excuse me. Good morning, Steve.
Well, look, Chris, good morning. I'm for the free market. So if employers and employees want to make a deal and they do 4 10-hour days rather than 5 8-hour days, I think that isn't really that the business of the. Why should the government be involved in that, Chris? Yeah, I'm a free market guy. I mean, in some cases it may work for a business. In some cases, it doesn't. You know, we're seeing some, talk of some businesses reducing the number of hours that employees work from 40 to 36 or 38 hours a week.
32 is this. So this particular.
Years ago, people work 60 hours a week.
Yeah. So, here's this particular proposal.
Words, I just don't want politicians involved in these decision makers. The free market can work here.
This particular proposal is any business that has more than 500 employees must reduce their hours from 40 per week to 32 per week without reducing employee pay. A Democrat is.
I mean, that's like. So, yeah, why not reduce it to 20 hours a week, and then workers can be twice as rich and they don't have to work? I mean, that's lunatic. And all we're going to do is give our, especially if it's factories or construction projects, we're just going to reduce the competitiveness of the American economy. Come on. You know, the Chinese workers work 50 hours a week, so how are we going to compete with that? Again, why is this a decision for politicians? This is a free country. If you're employing me, Chris, and you're paying me, $12 an hour, and I can go down the street and get $15 an hour, it's a free country. The competitive market works, and I just think it's a real outrage. Is that law that you're talking about, that's in the Pennsylvania legislature?
Well, it's one that they're floating in Pennsylvania, yes. I assume other states either have or will try it, but a Democrat is introducing it as a proposal
but you know what will happen then, of course. I just want to make sure that everyone in your listening audience living in the state of Pennsylvania, because I know you have people from all over the country listening, that will basically mean that factories and projects will move out of Pennsylvania, and you'll just accelerate the migration to Florida and Texas and more laissez-faire free market states. And so this idea that Pennsylvania can just legislate that everybody gets rich, boy, I wish the world were that simple.
Yeah, it's election season, too. It feels like another vote-buying scheme, like forgiving student loan debt to me, right? Yeah.
You mean you're accusing politicians of vote buying? Come on, that never happens.
Steve Moore, our chief economist. I did see Elon Musk post something on X the other day in support of someone else's observation that population, it's not just here in the United States, but I guess across the globe, in most developed or developing civilizations out there, population is in decline. People aren't making babies, Steve. And and Elon kind of harumphed this on X, saying, yes, this is a big problem. We all need to be paying attention. And again, not just here, China too, Japan too, Italy too, European nations too. So what of that? What does that mean that we're not reproducing as a people? And could that be, again, I have to go back to that cynical political idea that the Democrats always like to talk about illegal aliens crossing the southern border. We need people to pick the crops. I mean, if we're truly not reproducing, one could say that our politicians understand that better than anybody and like to see this free flow of cheap labor come in to fill all the holes, because we've got full employment almost, don't we, Steve? I mean, it's a weird thing. All these job openings and most people are working.
Yeah, look, you just opened a huge can of worms here. I mean, we could spend 2 hours talking about this because it is the big story of what's happening demographically across the world. Is that remember, it was just 30, 40 years ago, we were all worried about the population bomb, and oh my God, we're going to all be standing shoulder to shoulder on the planet Earth because we're all reproducing like Norwegian field mice. And instead, of course, we've seen a huge reduction in fertility, and partly that's because this is something that Julian Simon and others predicted decades ago, that as you have more prosperity, the number of children tends to that women are having tends to decline. Now, so here we are. Look at China. You mentioned China. China's birth rate now is down to 1.5 children per woman of a childbearing age. If you project that out like 100 years, that means China's population will be cut by half over that period. I just saw a statistic in Japan: 40% of women are not going to have a child, according to this new study in Japan. So I don't know what's going on here, but maybe it's the whole that so many people grew up in the generation where the quote science was, having children is a bad thing. The people are overpopulate the earth. But my gosh, we need more young people in this country. And I've always said this, I've been saying it for decades, that the one comparative advantage the United States has over China and Japan and Germany and all the countries we compete with is we do have this demographic safety valve of immigrants from all over the world want to come to the United States. This is the one destination and the first destination that migrants want to have. So I've always been in favor of immigration to the United States, legal, and not coming over the border illegally, the Biden way. But this is one of the advantages we're going to have over the next 50 years is we can import young people who want to work hard and want our freedom, share our freedoms and our liberties. And if that's the reason they come, we're going to need them because our birth rate now is well below replacement level fertility as well. And then the question is, what do we need to do to encourage couples to have more kids? I mean, I don't really, maybe I'd like to hear from your listeners. Why is it that young, 20 and 30-year-olds are not having children?
Well, I mean, we have spent a good chunk of this show talking about the fact that a lot of young women are voting exclusively on the issue of abortion now. And that is a huge problem for Republicans, that young women are moved almost exclusively on that issue of abortion post-Roe.
Yeah.
So that's a huge political issue for Republicans, too.
It is. The abortion issue is going to be used by the Democrats for sure.
Yeah.
But it goes.
Well, I didn't mean to drag you into that, but I will ask you this, that our entire system, of course, is predicated on this social safety net of taxpayers paying into the system and all of us drawing on Social Security later. I mean, if there's fewer and fewer of us working, that's a problematic system. It already is, obviously.
You better believe it because it's pay as you go. There's no black box there. It's not as if the money you and I have put in the Social Security system over the last, 30 or 40 years, that it's not as if that money's sitting in a safe deposit box. That money's been spent. So we better get the millennials to start having kids and the Generation X is having kids, or else who's going to pay for you and my retirement?
Mortgage rates continue to...
By the way, that's the reason I've always favored allowing people to... We've got to transfer the Social Security system into essentially like a 401k plan where people are investing in their own retirement. And that's the way it should have been, from the day one. And now we've got a system with these, trillions and trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities. How are they going to pay those benefits.
Look, I'm a 46-year-old man. I wish the federal government would come to me right now.
You're a youngster. See, I'm 63. I'm a lot older than you.
Here's what I want, though. I want the government to come to me right now because I'd take them up on it. I want them to come to me and say, here's a chunk of change. You can't touch it, but here, take this and put it wherever you want to put it. I'd take it and invest it myself. Right now, I would rather just cash out whatever the government would part with as my Social Security payout and leave me alone. That's what I wish, really.
Yeah, I think a lot of you. And by the way, just imagine this: if 40 years ago we had converted into this system, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here's a little food for thought. In 1984, in the summer of 1984, summer of 83, that would be 40 years ago. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was 1250. Now it's 35,000. Can you imagine? Every single person listening to this show, if you're in your 50s or 60s, you would be retiring a pension millionaire if you'd been able to invest that money yourself rather than put it into the black hole of Social Security.
Finally, mortgage rates.
Amazing.
I read last week, after you and I talked, that there's some projecting they believe mortgage rates will hit 8%. How about you?
It's always hard to predict where interest rates are going, but there's no question that the interest rates have gone up from, 2.9% when Trump left office, Chris, 2.9% to 7.1% today. I'm trying to do the calculations now, so these are not official because we're still trying to calculate it. But this is almost $500 a month and higher mortgage payments that a young, let's say you're in your 30s and you're going to buy your first house. You're going to pay $500 a month every month for the next 30 years on your 30-year mortgage because of these higher interest rates. That's a catastrophe.
Oh, remote-only workers.
A month, not a year, a month.
They do say that driving up childcare demand is up now that remote working is down, which is sort of interesting. Pandemic-era savings dwindle as childcare costs soar. So we're seeing a lot less job vacancies maybe than we used to. People are going back to work. They're being called out of the – starting to hear a lot of businesses now say no more stay-at-home stuff. You got to come back in, which I was kind of wondering when that breaking point would happen. I'm starting to hear that quite a bit now.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for. I'm not an expert on child care,
right?
Because my wife does that. But I will say this: that did you know, Chris? And did you? I bet a lot of your listeners didn't know this because I didn't know it until I was doing some research on this. That over half of the federal employees still have not gone back to work in Washington.
It doesn't surprise me. It's stunning. It doesn't.
What, 2.5 years ago
in San Francisco?
What is this, like a paid vacation?
They're telling them to stay home in San Francisco because of the crime. No kidding. That was a story last week.
Yeah. Finally, even Joe Biden said, hey, maybe it's time for federal employees to come back in the office. You got these big, anyone who's been to D.C., you go down, Pennsylvania Avenue and Constitution Avenue, you see all these massive, huge office buildings of federal employees. They're empty.
Yes. Gross. It's just grotesque. Steve Moore is our chief economist.
The only one that's full of workers is the IRS.
We check in with him every week.
Got to collect the money.
The hotline. Don't forget the daily hotline newsletter from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. He's at FreedomWorks, and he's on Team Trump again for another round. Stephen Moore on Twitter. Thank you, Steve-O.
The Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.